Important notice: the following content may be triggering. Viewer discretion is advised. All discussions are based on personal opinions and experiences. If you or someone you know needs help, please reach out to a local support organization. Important notice: the following content may be triggering. Viewer discretion is advised.
All right, it looks like we're live. So, welcome everybody to Through the Eyes of Survivors. I am Tara Woodlee, your host, and today we have a really interesting topic. So, abuse doesn't just leave scars, it alters every part of your life, from your sense of identity to the way you interact with the world. And the effects can be really overwhelming, and even long after you leave a situation, you can still feel it. But what if there was a clear roadmap to healing? What if you could not only break free but truly reclaim your life? So today we have an extraordinary guest joining us, Ronel Golden. She is a survivor, an advocate, and a creator of the Getting Out Guide. It's a resource designed to help victims navigate the complex and often dangerous process of escaping domestic violence. And Ronel's journey to freedom wasn't easy, but through her experiences, she developed a powerful 3-step process to help survivors end the harm permanently. We'll be diving deep into the concept of the pillars of existence, which is a framework that helps survivors, and see how they can begin to heal. We're going to uncover common patterns and that tend to keep us survivors stuck, right? And most importantly, a step to being free for good. So, but before we dive in real quick, I want to take a moment to introduce something that is a game changer here, one of our partners, affiliates, Opus Clip. If you're a content creator, a podcaster, or even someone looking to repurpose content, video content effortlessly, Opus Clip uses AI to generate the best short form clips from long videos. We use it here to generate clips from these podcasts. It has been a godsend, I will tell you. It makes the job so much easier, and you can check it out through our special affiliate link that is scrolling across the bottom there. And you signing up through Opus Clip through our link helps support Break the Silence Against Domestic Violence and our efforts. So let's get into the conversation today. Ronel Golden, we welcome you to Through the Eyes of Survivors.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for all the work that you do.
Oh, thank you. We are so glad to have you here. So let's just hop right into the topic of what are the pillars of existence and why are they so important for survivors to understand?
Okay, so when I was getting out of abuse, it's a difficult process for anybody, whether you have a clear roadmap or not. So I want to say that to begin with,
Yes.
it's not an easy task. However, what was really difficult when I was getting out was that there was no roadmap. There were a lot of books and resources on just abuse in general, potentially on the abuser, what's wrong with him, how you can fix this relationship. A lot of the books and the resources were extremely complicated,
Right.
and nothing really just said to me, if you do this, the odds of you getting out are better. Because it was a lot of ethereal, theoretical ideas that weren't very practical. And I'm a very practical person. I still read the manual before I assemble a product. A lot of people don't, but I read the manual and I follow it step by step. And so it tends to work out if you do it that way.
Right.
A lot of people want to jump to step 5, and I'm okay going through step 1, 2, 3, 4 so that I can get to 5 and the thing is standing. And then as I was thinking about it and talking to people about it, they said to me, well, there can be no roadmap out of abuse because every victim's journey is so different. Their background is different, their cultural dynamics are different, their financial environment are different, and all these different things. And I said, well, if you can bake a cake anywhere in the world using different types of butter or ingredients or whatever at different altitudes with different air pressures in different types of ovens, then, and we think that it's such an easy thing to do, but that's also quite a complex process. So I just decided I need to figure out if there's a way to do this. And it took me 4 years, but I think, based on my experience, a lot of other survivors, victims that I spoke to, and other people, this is a process that actually does work if you're willing to kind of follow it step by step again.
Right.
So, like I said, like you said earlier, it's a three-step process. You've got to, diagnose, are you being abused? That's the very first thing that you need to do. Is this an abusive relationship?
Yes, exactly. Because so many people don't realize even I have spoke to many people out there at various speaking engagements, and a lot of women come up and go, "Oh, well, I guess I'm a victim too," because they didn't realize, like, just if you're not being hit, then they figure it's not abuse, right?
Exactly. That's the thing. If I haven't been hit, it's not abuse. I thought that. And even, but the thing is, since I convinced myself so much that abuse is this specific thing that potentially could never happen to me, even after you do get hit, then you will still be making the excuses that it's not really abuse. Because
Right.
being hit, you have to be in the hospital or you have to have a permanent brain injury, like all these different things that we tell ourselves to convince ourselves we're not being abused, all right? Living in the denial. So that's the
Mhm.
first step. The second step is to analyze why you are vulnerable to abuse. What is it that makes you as an individual vulnerable to abuse? And that could be multiple different things. And the other thing is, why do certain people abuse? Because you have to also get to the point where you realize that you're facing an uphill battle trying to fix your abuser. If
Right.
you think you're going to do that in this relationship, you can spend your entire life on this and it will go through a cycle of peace and tranquility and calm and everything else. But unfortunately, that abusive behavior will most likely 99.9% of the cases start up again. And then the third thing is that you have to plan and act. You have to
Yeah.
plan what you're going to do to leave, and you have to act. Now, you can't plan if your life is in danger, then you have to run. But if you
Right.
do not have to run, then if you plan, the odds of you going back, to your abuser reduce, or the amount of times you will go back at least reduces. And also the odds of you getting into another abusive relationship later on also reduces. So that's kind of the three-step process. And this whole three-step process is built around the idea of who you are as a human being. Because what are you trying to get out of abuse? You're trying to get yourself out of the abusive relationship.
Mhm.
But unless you know what you are as a human being, you don't know what you're trying to get out of the relationship. A lot of people think that a human being is a body, mind, and a soul.
Right.
Great, fantastic, wonderful. Except, what does that even mean? And I think that body, mind, and soul is a very simplistic way at looking at a human being. So now finally we get to the pillars of existence. If you look at yourself as an entire human being, there are seven things that make you, that kind of like define your life. I called the mental pillar, which is your brain, your emotions, your conscious mind, your subconscious mind.
Mhm.
And I think that is the key. If your mind is under the control of somebody else, your life is going to be under the control of somebody else. If you can, or if you're able to free your mind, control your emotions, reestablish, control over those things, I think that your odds are much better of controlling the rest of your pillars. So that's the most important one. The second one, I would love to say that it's something more ethereal, but it's your financial pillar. Because without money, if you're not in control of your money, you're not,
Mhm.
unfortunately, you're not in control of your life. And if somebody else
Exactly.
yeah. So that's the second thing. You're a financial being. Money, unfortunately, helps you to live a life of independence. And it doesn't need to be a lot of money. It's just enough money to pay for your expenses in life. So you don't need to have a ton of money. You just don't have to depend on somebody for food or shelter or the basic things that you need. The next thing is your social pillar. So relationships are incredibly important. We think that relationships are built by going out, drinking a couple of cocktails, having a glass of rosé, talking to people. That's not what a relationship is. A relationship is a much deeper thing. You need to understand what relationships are, and you need to understand how your good relationships have most likely been severed by your abuser, the solid ones, the ones that you can rely on. The next one is your physical pillar. You have a body. That body may have been hit, but that body may have just been under extreme stress and pressure, which harms your body. That body, you may have not been eating well because your abuser is watching what you're eating and telling you that you're fat or whatever it is. You might be using substances to help yourself get through all this stress and tension, which also harms your body. So your physical pillar is the next one. The next one is your environmental pillar. That is everything around you that has an influence on you. You're unsafe in your home. You're stressed out when you're there, at least a part of the time. Where do you work? What is your neighborhood like? Is it safe? What are you watching on social media and on TV? Are you watching things that uplift you or things that cause even more stress in you and kind of pull you down and make you depressed, all these different things? So that's your environmental pillar. The next one is your rights pillar. You as a human being, you have human rights, you have legal rights, you have contractual rights. And mostly we don't understand that. The first time I read what domestic violence actually meant, I was totally shocked to see that I've been in a domestic violence situation because it said it there in black and white. Like this is what and it includes screaming and shoving and things that I didn't even think was like a big deal. But so your rights pillar. It's a very difficult pillar to manage, however. It's very difficult to go to the courts. It's very expensive to go to the courts. The law enforcement system, the DAs, like all these systems are very much overworked. So while that is your most like basic pillar that should be under your control, it's one of the most difficult ones to actually exert control over.
Yes.
It's wild, right? And then the last one is your spiritual pillar. So your spiritual pillar is people think it's going to church, we're going to temple, we're going to mosque. That's not what it is. Your spiritual pillar is focusing on all the things that don't have a material value in your life, but provide hope, a vision for the future, like, all the things that generate hope in you. And if you look at all of these pillars, then you can figure out where you've been harmed and what to do about it. So that's why those are the 7 pillars of existence, basically, in a nutshell.
Wonderful. So when we explore those pillars, right? What is some possible things that we can identify? Let's say, like unseen ways that abuse shapes our lives within those pillars.
Well, I think the very first thing is your mental pillar, the ability for somebody else to control your behavior. Your behavior is what you think, feel, say, and do. So I think one of the easiest ways to figure out whether, and in the book there is actually an exercise. One of the easiest ways to figure out if your mental pillar is under your control or under somebody else's control is to see, do you have control over your emotions? If number one, do you react to other people's behavior towards you without first thinking? We become very reactive when we're in abusive relationships because we are in fight or flight mode all the time. We're nervous all the time. Our central nervous system is like on edge all the time. So can you stop and think before you react? Number two is when you feel an emotion or you believe something to be true, do you stand on that by far, or can other people convince you that what you're feeling or thinking or what your opinion is wrong? Those are 2 very easy ways. Then of course there are the other things. Like that's more for abusive relationships. There are the other things. Can you concentrate? Can you rest and feel like you can focus on things? Are you very easily distracted? So those are the other add-ons. But that's in terms of a mental pillar, that's one of the easiest ways. But I want to take a step back though from your pillars, and I want to go into the definition of what abuse is, because the first thing is that you need to diagnose if you're being abused.
Right, exactly. We had someone in here comment, you can diagnose abuse, but you must define abuse. So definitely, and please, everybody, chime into the comments. We will read them and answer anything we can as we're going. So please feel free to do that. But yes, let's have a definition. Yes.
So a lot of people. So again, we get into these things where people think abuse is being hit. It's not that, or your money being taken. It's a combination of everything. So what abuse is when one partner in an intimate relationship uses a pattern of behavior to get and keep control over the other partner.
Yes.
That is a very common description of what abuse is, right?
Mm-hmm.
I added one thing to it that's typically not part of this definition, and that is for the benefit of the person who has the control. So let's just quickly run through that. What is one partner in an intimate relationship? Okay, intimacy does not mean sex. You don't have to have sex with this person or live in the same house with them. There, it means intimacy means trust and a relationship where this person, where you will listen to what they have to say, you will trust that they have your best interest at heart.
Yeah.
Intimacy is created by opening up to somebody, feeling comfortable with somebody, telling them your secrets. That's what intimacy is. So we should not assume that if you don't live with somebody or you're not having sex with somebody, that that is not an intimate relationship. That's not true. First thing.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing is I use a pattern of behavior. So let's look at pattern and behavior. So pattern is doing the same thing over and over again. It does not mean it's the exact same thing that the person is doing to you. For example, they might scream at you, but then they might hit you another time. They might take something from you and not give it back. So it could the pattern could be different. The behaviors could be different types of behaviors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Also, the behavior is not always bad behavior. That's very important to remember that. Behavior is bad, but it's typically followed by good behavior because the way that an abuser keeps control over you and makes sure that you don't actually leave is by using, like, doing the bad behavior and then doing the nice things that keep you calm, make sure that you stay and that you don't run away. So I will scream at you and call you names, and I'll go, I'm so sorry, like, I didn't mean that, you're the best thing ever. And then for a few weeks we see this good behavior and you're so special, or a few days you're so nice. So bad behavior and good behavior can be abusive behavior in an abusive relationship. Now we look at a pattern. A pattern is something that happens over and over again, but it doesn't have to be the same behavior. It could be screaming, it could be hitting, it could be different things. And then after that, the good behavior follows, then the bad behavior, and then the good behavior. But what a pattern does do is it conditions you.
Right.
Yeah. So let's look at athletes, right? Like the best athletes in the world, they eat the same thing every single day. They exercise, they have different types of exercise that they do, but they do the same thing every day. It conditions their body to be in top condition and to be able to tolerate whatever it is that their body needs to be able to tolerate to be the best in their sport. It's the same thing with abuse. That pattern of behavior conditions you to tolerate the abusive behavior to begin with, and then increasingly abusive behavior. So it starts very nice, then there's an incident. You think, oh my goodness, what happened here? I trust this person. I have an intimate relationship with them. I believe that they want what's best for me. I've opened up to them. So you already kind of believe that they're good. Then they use the good behavior to convince you that they're good. And this pattern then continues until ultimately you're under complete control of the other person. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the pattern of behavior. And then it is to get and keep control over you. So get control over you, that's the initial thing. I meet this person, I want to get control over them, but I want to keep control over them, and therefore the pattern of behavior. Your abuser is not trying to get you to leave. He can kick you out. He can tell you that he hates you. He can do all these different things, and either because you go back or because they kind of draw you in a subtle way, they want to get and keep the control over you. But then why? Because you offer some kind of a benefit. And this is what a lot of victims, I think, don't understand. Because we've been broken down and told how pathetic and useless we are,
Mm-hmm.
we're in the private rooms and all these things, we think that there's nothing that we can offer our abuser. That is false. If you did not offer your abuser anything, he would be on to the next person who can offer them something. So what do you offer your abuser? It could be money, that you've got an income and they want your money. It could be that you're just a good accessory to take to a party. It could be that they want their kids to be taken care of, somebody to keep the house, like keep the house clean, whatever. They could simply need a punching bag so that they can go out into public and be nice to everybody else, but they're using you as a punching bag at home. So you have to sit down, you have got to figure out, okay, this person, even though they tell me that I'm pathetic, are still with me. So they're not trying to get rid of me. So that means that they must be getting something from me. If they think so little of me, why are they, why are we still here in this environment, and haven't they left and never come back, or not allowed me to go back to them? Because sometimes when you go back, you think I'm the one who went back. So it's not them, but they allowed you to come back. But if they think so poorly of you, then why would they allow that? So that is kind of the dynamic, and that's the definition. That's the way that I
Oh
see
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I totally absolutely. So like everybody who's like listening, maybe those who haven't been in an abusive relationship, I can tell you right now that is so true because the cycle of my 13 years of marriage was exactly it was such an established pattern. You know exactly what's going to happen when it
it.
happens. So, he would back me into a corner yelling and screaming at me, and he would literally like punch holes in the wall next to
Yeah.
my head, and he didn't touch me, so that's not abuse,
Exactly.
right? And then he was twice my size, so I would shove him to get out of the corner. Well, then I'm the one who started it by
Oh,
putting my
yeah.
hand, and he would always, "You put your hands on me first,
Exactly.
so it's your fault." And then you feel so guilty over the whole situation, and then later when hands did get put on me, it was all, "You started it, it's your fault." It's a
Yeah.
conditioning process. It
Absolutely.
really, and you're backed into this whole game of, well, I created this because he's convinced you of that at
Oh,
this
yeah.
point. And breaking free of that mindset is really hard to do because I know I personally went for the, well, he's a work in progress. I can work with
I
that.
can fix
We
him. I
can
can save
fix it.
him. I can
Yeah.
fix him. I can save him. Look at him. It's
And
just
he would say
fixing.
that to me too. I just need somebody to love me. I
Or you're
didn't have
saving
that
me. You're
love.
helping me. You're helping me. Without you, I would never be able. So that's the victim card. Like
Mhm,
I go through all these things that abusers tell you,
mhm,
including how and I don't want to say that they're intentionally happy, but when you retaliate or you scream back or you push back or you slap back, it is a little win for your abuser, because they know that it's very easy to turn the tables on you in that case and to tell you, because they have so much control over your mental state at that point in time, that it's a little bit of a win for them. It's almost like, I want you to shove me back or push me back or whatever, so that I can tell you that you are the perpetrator of the abuse.
mhm. Well, and then it would always finish with, if he did put his hands on me physically, it was he was so sorry he wanted to die, and he would threaten self-harm, and then you feel even more guilty because then you are trying to save them, and you're the person who needs saving. So it's a vicious cycle. It really
It's
is.
a vicious cycle. And I think, and I think that kind of like flows into the next part of it, is like, you've got to analyze why this has happened. So once you know that, okay, this a pattern of behavior, I'm in a pattern of behavior, it looks kind of like this. You look at some of the truths and lies and you realize that I've been told a bunch of lies that are not accurate, and like, I don't really understand what abuse means. So then you decide, okay, this is abuse. Now I've got to go and you've got to figure out, why are you vulnerable to abuse? Because let's face it, not everybody is vulnerable to abuse. I have
Mhm,
some female and male friends who are vulnerable to abuse, and I have some male and female friends, and whatever people's gender orientation is, who are not vulnerable to abuse. So why are you vulnerable to abuse? Why do you allow people to treat you differently from the way that you treat people?
mm,
What is that? What happened? What made you believe that that's okay? Or, if even if you don't believe it's okay, to tolerate that? And that's where you get into the self analysis part of this, because I honestly believe that, unless, it's good to know why people abuse, and we can talk about that for sure, what makes somebody an abuser. But you've got to figure out why you're vulnerable to abuse, because unless you do that very deep self worth work and you
yes.
understand at which point in your life did you stop believing that you had enough value for people to treat you the way that you treat them? No better, no worse, not narcissistic. Everybody has to treat me like I'm a princess, but at least the way that I treat them. What happened? And that is probably, I would say, the most pivotal exercise that we often leave out of what I call abuse recovery. Because for me,
Mhm.
it's a recovery process, right? And because it is difficult to go and look at that. That's the most painful process, is when you have to go into the past and you've got to go, who did what to me? Also, what did I do wrong? Because your self worth is not only affected by what other people did to you, but it's also what you did wrong. Even if you were like mean to a kid when you were in school and you didn't know any better, or maybe I stole a bag of peanuts once from a grocery store because my grandmother brought my brother a bag of chips and she didn't want to buy me peanuts. And so I took it home, and that I carried that with me for decades, believing that there's something wrong with me because I stole a bag of peanuts.
Mhm.
So unless you do this work and you figure out, how have I been harmed? So therefore, I will allow other people. My self worth has been reduced. So I believe that I can be hit, or my things can be taken from me, or I can be screamed at, or told how pathetic I am, because deep inside, I believe that I am.
Right.
So you've got to get rid of that.
Mm.
That I think that's the hardest exercise to do and probably in the first part of the getting out process.
No, absolutely, absolutely. I think we'll go to a few comments here real quick and see what, everybody's saying out there. We got Dawn's definitely check, check, check. Yes, it's all about supply.
Yeah.
Yes, imitation, gaslighting. Yes, Dawn. Intimidation. Yeah.
Gaslighting. When I learned that
Yes.
word in my life, I was like, my mind was blown. I'm like, this is literally the life that I'm living right now.
Mhm. We have Charles in here saying that abuse totally destroys you, which is why women and girls need support. Yes. Um, let's see. Dawn is very vocal. Dawn, we're hello, welcome. Yes, she is definitely yes, reinforcement. They definitely will suck you back in.
Exactly.
Definitely.
And the thing about the sucking back in is that you believe that you went back. So, which is even
Mhm.
worse. And maybe you did initiate that initial contact, but if you wait long enough, they will eventually come back to you in any case. So you feel like you keep going back. And of course, we all know that the average victim will go back at least 7 times.
Oh
And
yes.
each time you go back, the other person, your abuser, has more control, and you feel more shame. Because every time you leave, you tell everybody, I'm leaving, I did this, great. The first time you go back, it's like, okay, well, I don't want to tell everybody that I went back. And the second, the third time, and eventually you don't tell anybody. And so you become even more and more isolated in this process where you're going back and forth.
Absolutely. Audrey brought up reactive abuse. This is how some of that begins, what we were talking about as well. Let's
Yeah,
see. Wanda said, mine started as a young child because my biological mother is a narcissist and abused mentally, emotionally, physically. Yes, a lot of us have some family member who that's where it started. Absolutely.
absolutely. And that is the most extreme type of conditioning, because that just means that you are very, fruitful soil for any abuser to come in. Because even if somebody's behavior towards you is bad, as an adult, familiar behavior, you will go towards familiar behavior even if it's harmful to you. It's kind of, unless you're aware of it, and awareness is kind of key.
Yes, and then, Deborah, she asked about, re-traumatization. So
Are we talking, Deborah? Are we talking about re-traumatization when you go through self-worth exercises and you experience the trauma again of some of the things that you went through as a child or as a young person? Or I'm assuming that's what she's talking about. If she's talking about that, look, the self-worth exercise, and obviously I worked on this book with therapists and psychiatrists and psychologists and various people, even
mhm,
though, you know, all therapists and psychiatrists and psychologists are different, and there are different ways of getting the support that you need. I love group therapy. I think that's the best way of therapy. So I'm not saying that people have to go to a psychiatrist, psychologist, or a specific type of therapist. But what I will say is that going through the self worth exercise can be re traumatizing. There have been instances where people discover something that happened to them at a young age, which was that they had buried so deep inside themselves they were not aware of. And that can actually cause a massive re-traumatizing effect, even to the point where some people may need to be institutionalized to deal with it. So what I would say is that if you're going to go very deep into that exercise, it's ideal to have some kind of a therapist, some kind of a
Yeah, she's talking about when you have to go through the court systems and they re-traumatize you through the
that
process.
also.
Yeah,
Okay. So
yeah.
let's talk about the rights pillar, because Deborah, this is a very interesting question. Yeah, like in the judicial system. So your rights should be the easiest pillar for you to be able to enforce. If you think about your human rights, your legal rights, and your contractual rights. I hate to say this, but I think it's the hardest of all the pillars to work through, because exactly what you said. The judicial system is set up in very complex ways. And I don't want to criticize it. Law enforcement, absolutely. Law enforcement, overworked, underpaid, undertrained. There's a lot of complications there. Your DAs, your district attorneys, all these people who are supposed to support you, massive problem as well. Very little time, too little training. And this is just, there are so many people in this situation. Then you get your human rights. Good luck. You've got to go to, a human rights court to get your human rights enforced. And then even if you have contractual rights, like if you have a contract with your spouse or with your partner, if they don't stick to the contractual specifications, what are you going to do? That costs money to go to civil court as well.
Right.
So that is very difficult. I will never tell anybody to not try to enforce your rights. But what I will say is that, remember, you've got 6 other pillars. You've got 6 other pillars that you can work on, that you can exert more control over your mental state. Finding a free group to start understanding what's going on in your brain, what's going on in your mind, your financial, getting a job, getting free training online, trying to get your employer to give you a different job, whatever it is, your environment where you live, trying to figure out where you can live that is further away from your abuser or like in a safe place. So I completely understand what you're saying, Deborah. And apart from the traumatization, it's just like, does the system work? And is there capacity in the system to support the amount of victims that there are? Because if 1 out of 3 women will be abused in their lifetime, 1 out of 9 men, 1 out of 2 LGBTQ people, we don't
Mhm.
have enough support for this. And that's why, for me, I'm like, or like us as a community, we need to start figuring out how do we help each other rebuild, because unfortunately government has not solved our problems and is not going to solve our problems,
Mhm.
because not because they don't want to, maybe, but it's because they don't know how to, and there's just not enough resources to solve it. So we've got to support each other and help each other rebuild all these different elements that we know that we can have more control over.
No, absolutely, I agree. We have some really great comments in here from Wanda talking about how the judicial system failed her.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2.5 years later, still married to a man and didn't know what to do because I can't go to court without an attorney by my side because this county is for men. Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Wanda, I would love to plan and act, figuring out what you can do on the other 6 pillars, slowly but surely building up a little bit of financial resources, figuring out, is there a place where you can stay if you do leave? Getting some mental health support so that you can, withstand all the stress that you're facing now and start healing while you're still, there are things you can do, but yeah, I totally understand that issue.
Yes, absolutely.
It's very difficult to function with PTSD, extremely difficult. Your executive function is affected. The other problem with PTSD is that your brain grows. It continues your brain can expand after the age of 26, but your brain pretty much grows up until the age of 26 aggressively. Neurons are replicating all the time. And then the process slows down. There are things that you can do to speed up that process. But the problem is that PTSD, what it is that your brain is trying to find pathways around the trauma, right? So the trauma lives somewhere, and now your brain is going, okay, but wait, your brain is constantly trying to fix itself, but it takes a long time, and the older you are, the longer it takes. And so it could be, years, months, years, but decades to get it to the point. The main thing with your brain is to understand that there's something not okay in your brain, that your brain is going to knee jerk to certain responses and reactions because there's something wrong, and then to start doing that work. And everything, I agree, mindfulness, yoga, meditation, all those things can help. Also, by the way, as strong as mindfulness, meditation, yoga, community, relationships is being proven over and over again how good solid relationships are and how much they do for your brain health. So
Absolutely.
building relationships with people that you can trust, whether it is in your group therapy group or in your knitting group or whatever it is, huge impact, and helps with the recovery process and the
Yes, absolutely, and I think that's a good segue into our little break here, so we're gonna take a quick break, but before we continue, that's what I wanted to kinda talk to y'all about is our little community. I wanted to tell you about something really special. This June, we're hosting a Survivor Sister Retreat. It's a powerful weekend designed to bring survivors together for healing, connection, and renewal. And the retreat space is where you'll find community and strength and the tools to help you in your healing journey. So, we're going to take a short moment to play a clip about the retreat, and then we're going to come back and talk some more about the pillars. So, please stay with us.
What I wish I knew a year ago is that healing is possible, and you don't have to do it alone. Welcome to Sister Survivor Retreat in beautiful Colorado Springs, June 19th, 22. This retreat is your sanctuary, a place where you can connect with other women who understand your journey. Experience the transformative power of equine therapy, feel the serenity in yoga sessions, and create nourishing sugar scrubs. Our empowering workshops are designed to help you reclaim your strength and embrace your future. Most importantly, you'll build a sisterhood, a community of support that will last long after the retreat ends. If you've been DV-free for at least a year, join us to find healing and connection. Visit our website to apply or click the link in the description. Remember, you are not alone. Together we rise. What I wish I knew a year ago.
All right, we're back. And moderators will put that link into the comments here, but definitely you can check it out on our website, which is, break the silence against the myth. Was it break the silence dv.org. Sorry. I'm so
we have
used
a
to
lot
saying
of
the
we have a
whole
lot going
name.
on.
Yeah. Yes. So, and like I said, the links will be in the chat. So you definitely can check that out. We've been doing the retreats for years, and I got to say, they will change your life. So, and this year we even have horses involved. We're going to be at an excursion where we get to spend a day with horses and helping to groom them, and I'm really excited about that. So that's the first time we've incorporated that into the retreat. So we're looking forward to that. So Ron, now let's get back to the pillars. So we've had a lot of, I know, comments in here, but we talked about the legal pillar, which you said. Which other one would you like to kind of touch on next, considering the conversation we have going on here?
Yeah, I think like a couple, but what I wanted to say, so let me talk about two of the pillars. I think
Okay.
I hate to say that the financial pillar,
Yeah.
financial and environmental pillars are so integrated because whether you're an investment banker making like a nice big salary, or whether you are a homemaker who hasn't worked for 20 years, most likely your financial pillar is going to have been harmed in one way or the other, and is not going to provide for you to have the quality of life probably that you would like to have in
Mhm.
some cases. And I think that's one of the main reasons why we stay. It's very scary to go into the world without money. And
Yes.
yeah, so I would definitely, like, one of the greatest things is education equals like income. We know that in the modern world. And what's really interesting is that the amount of free educational resources where you can get a diploma or a skill, that you can have some kind of an accreditation that can get you a job. I think that's, for me, very it's like a light at the end of the tunnel for a lot
Yes.
of people. And I would, and when people come to me and they say, well, I don't have enough money and it's possible to get it, I think that is like there are opportunities for you to get trained or retrained in different things and then potentially develop, like, generate some income. So I really want people to know that I mean, I think all of us ended up maybe with a couple of suitcases and a few $100s at best, trying to start it over. And it's possible. You need just a few friends who are going to help you out, maybe a couch to sleep on until you get that first job. And before you know it, you might have your own place again, or, put that deposit down on a car. Like, if that's the extreme situation that you're in, a lot of people aren't. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that's something that I would like to say. And what's really also awesome is that a lot of the companies like LinkedIn and other places are now hiring or placing people based on their skills, not on their degrees or like on their
Right.
experience, but it's literally on recent. So I think that financial pillar is something that looms over people, but I think that there are lots of potential solutions for that. And that shouldn't be something, that prohibits, like stops you from leaving, because
Mm-hmm.
you can do this. The other thing that I would say is that the way that you can figure out exactly where the damage has been done in your life is through a process of taking stock of each one of these pillars. And so, like what I explain in the book, I give you for your mental health pillar, I give you a questionnaire and I go, like, rate yourself, see where you are right now. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you might be a 0 out of 10, you might be a 5 out of 10, you might be a 9 out of 10. Next thing, your financial pillar, I provide a budget of this is what it actually costs to live, because a lot of women who've been married for a long time don't actually know
Yeah,
how much.
they don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. And so then you can figure out where you are, your environment. Do you feel safe in your environment, your social circles? Like, what are your actual relationships? When you look at the actual definition of what a relationship is, people that trust you, understand you, and respect you, how many of those do you have in your life? So you take stock, you figure out where each one of these pillars are. The next step is, what do I need to do? And that's in the next chapter, to get to a minimum level of sustainability. So I know that for me to leave, I need at least X amount of money, X amount of mental will and strength and support, X amount of people in my life that if things go wrong, I can turn to. And once you know what that is, you can get to that minimum level of sustainability, and then you can leave. Again, if your life's in danger, you leave immediately. But now the odds, if you have that minimum level of sustainability, the odds of you going back are much less. So that's the one thing that I would like to say. The other thing that I would like to say is, there was something interesting. Will you ever be, like, you will be domestic violence free, but will you ever be completely free from the work that you have to do to stay out of a domestic violence environment? I'm going to say this is a lifelong journey.
Yes.
Check yourself all the time. You're going to have to, especially when you think about getting into another relationship, you have been vulnerable to abuse once. That means that you have to go in so conscious,
Mm-hmm.
so unwilling to be wooed or romanticized or whatever. And nobody really wants to do that, but you've got to be so open eyed when you go into another relationship. And that's the same thing with each one of these pillars. I highly
Right.
recommend. So I called, like, I'm saying single, darn, I'm with you. I hear you. I hear you. But what I highly recommend is to take a retreat with yourself. A retreat doesn't have to mean that you go to, some fancy beach resort and you stay there for 5 days. I'm talking about, a coffee in the park once every 6 months, where you go through your pillars and you make sure that you're on track with each of these pillars, that you're not giving up on any of them, that they're strong enough that it doesn't open a door for an abuser, your former or new abuser, to get into, and to just run through that process. And I think doing that, you can stay single if that's what you want to do, but you still have to take stock of these pillars to make sure that you're on the right track and that you're not, kind of deviating from where you need to be.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my. We have a lot. Linda, definitely. Let's see. There's a lot to unpack in her comment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it about closure? Look, I don't know if it's only about closure, but let me just say something. Uh, A person who is capable of abusing, like, your brain controls your behavior. Like, I think all victims of domestic violence need to really dive deep into neurology as much as you can and try to understand what the brain does. The brain is in charge of your behavior. It means everything you think, feel, say, and do. Now, some people, there's a norm of behavior, right? Things that are accepted in society, the way that we interact with each other. However, some people act outside of the norm. So some people are capable, for example, harming another person is outside of the norm. However, some people, as we know, because we're victims and survivors of domestic violence, some people behave outside of that norm. That means that there's a deviation in your brain because that controls your behavior in, like, from the norm, right? So your brain is abnormal in some way for you to be able to harm somebody and not feel guilt about it or be able to change your behavior. So I think it's very important to understand that an abuser's factory settings of their brains say to them, your behavior is okay. They can't find fault with it, which is why they continue to do it, even if they stop for a while, or if they get, if they stop for a while, they will continue back with that behavior. There are ways to stop that behavior temporarily. It's psychotherapy and medication. But anybody whose brain tells them that you're normal is not going to want to be on that for their lifetime, because unfortunately, it's a lifetime journey when you're on that kind of medication. So now you're trying to get to closure with a person whose brain does not work the way that your brain works.
Mm-hmm.
That is not going to happen.
Right.
It is not. You are going to have to make a decision. I am taking control of my life. I am walking away, and I can do it without closure. You have to forgive the person because, unfortunately, and this is horrible to say, but you cannot move on unless you have actually finally forgiven somebody. It's very difficult to do, and it takes a long, long time. But forget about closure, focus on the forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Because the moment you try to get closure, you're opening a door for the person to come back into your life.
Oh, and you don't want that. Believe me, you don't want that. Mm-mm.
You walk, you run, you block, you switch off, you change your phone number, you get other people to check in with when you feel like calling them, or when they're calling you, or they find you, or they track you down, or they want to apologize to you. I'm so sorry, I just want to apologize to you. No, any door you open, anything that you think is going to get you to closure is not. It's going to take you in the opposite direction.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, there's a lot of ladies out here are staying single, they say.
And I get it. I get it. It's difficult. It is difficult. It's difficult to trust somebody, but also, here's the other crazy thing is, as a survivor of domestic violence, you have a superpower. You're a very strong human being. You're an
Yes.
exception to the rule. You're a strong human being, and your brain has grown. It has developed. You're smarter. You're more capable, and so the pot of partners, whether you're male or female, the pot of partners are just smaller to begin with. And now you add a little bit of that distrust that still lives in you because it's inevitable.
Mhm.
It if it ever goes away, I'm not sure. There's always a little bit of distrust. I guess good people can overcome that. Good people in your
Mhm.
life over time. But so your pot of people that you can date or be in a relationship with are very small because of who you've become. Like, you
Right.
have become stronger and wiser and independent, and yeah, it's not. You're a unique animal at this point.
Yes, absolutely. I'll say I felt that way for a while, but I did find, just so you ladies know, I did find a good husband, but boy, he was very he understood and put up with a lot because I went through phones, I did all kinds of stuff
Yeah,
for many years, and you know what? He didn't care. He'd hand
that's
me the phone
amazing.
and go, "You go through it. I don't care." And until I finally, after several years, decided I didn't have to do that anymore. I was
Yeah,
still reliving that past life. I have a new one now, but it took a lot of work,
right.
and a lot of realization of what I
But
was
there,
doing and the life I could have, you
right.
know?
But that is what you just said is really good advice to everybody who's listening to this podcast.
Mhm.
Is that if a man cannot understand your past and why you have to do certain things to build trust, that's okay. Some people cannot, and some women cannot. So men
Yeah.
and women get abused, but some people cannot understand what you've been through or what you need to do to get to a level of comfort. And that's fine. That's not the person for you then. Like if
Mm-hmm.
somebody can do that, and you are very lucky. And I think, when you get to the spiritual pillar, the meditation, the focus,
Yes.
potentially putting things into the universe, you can do that. And like you got a wonderful partner, and that's great.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the dream. It's not possible. Everybody doesn't get that, but we all have a role to play in society. So
Just be open when it comes. That's all
yeah,
I say. Yes.
yeah.
And if it doesn't happen, it's okay to be single too. So
And don't move your boundaries, because what you
right.
said, you didn't move your boundaries, and you made it clear, like, I may be going through your phone, you may not like it, but that's what I need to do to feel comfortable and confident in this relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so you didn't move your boundary. It's when
No,
you
and
start
we
moving your boundary.
discussed them beforehand. We called them deal breakers when we were dating. This was my deal breakers, this was his deal breakers, and if we couldn't deal with those, then we weren't gonna date.
Right,
So, and so that's kind of, I'm not the only one. He had a bad relationship as well, that there were
right,
certain breakers. We
right.
both had that coming into it. But it's learning to have those kinds of conversations with people, even amongst parents or
Yes.
siblings that you have toxic relationships with as well.
So we had an interesting conversation just yesterday. The difference between, and now I'm trying to remember, fearlessness. The difference between strength and fearlessness. The difference between the ability to survive and fearlessness. So if you can get through an abusive relationship, you have the ability to survive. But fearlessness is the next step.
Right.
Fearlessness is where you go and you go, I can say what is in my heart. I can
Mhm.
ask for what I need. I
Yeah.
can let things go because it's not, it's somebody else's issue to deal with.
Mhm.
That is fearlessness. I don't have to control everything in my environment. You want to get control over that to be able to become a survivor, but then knowing what you need to control. So that is like the next level, I think, after survival is when you get to fearlessness. And that's what you had, because you could say, these are my boundaries. If you still had fear, you would be like, I don't want to tell him what it is. Because if I told him what it is,
Mhm.
maybe he's going to leave me. And you're like, he leaves me. Great. Better. Because then at least I'm not in a situation where I've moved my boundary and now I'm going to end up in a negative situation again. And I just wanted to mention something to Wanda. I think it's Wanda who said that she can't afford a lawyer.
Mhm.
Wanda, most people cannot afford a lawyer. Like, lawyers are exceptionally expensive.
I did my divorce myself.
Me too.
I couldn't afford one.
Couldn't afford one. And
So,
and yeah, so and that's a problem. But what you can do again is that you can control the other six pillars of your existence.
mhm,
So you can learn about how to file for divorce, or you can, the other things like how to get more income. You can learn, environmentally, you can educate yourself about how to get a divorce. There are other things you can do. And so potentially, if you know that this pillar is out of your control completely, focus on the other six and try to build them up, because the other six can stand up the one that you can't control, probably, and at least enough for you to be able to get out and move on in your life.
mhm. Yeah, let's talk just a little bit before we close out about maybe establishing some small manageable goals to help regain that kind of control, or practical things we can do. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So the first thing is mental health support. You can join a free group, Emotions Anonymous. There are so many support groups. Your church might have a support group in your town. The
Mhm,
town itself might have a support group. Emotions Anonymous has online and in-person support groups in various places. Also, any domestic violence organization, they probably have a support group. Just sitting in a group of people and talking to other people who have been through similar experiences than you as you is going to help your mental health.
yeah.
100%. It's possibly one of the most powerful things that you can do, even if you can afford a psychiatrist, psychologist, or individual therapist. It's going to be probably more powerful and faster, and you're going to develop relationships. So that's the one thing that I would absolutely do. The second thing that I would do is get more money if you don't have money. If you have a ton of money, that's fine. But the other thing that I would do is figure out how can you educate yourself, how can you get a job, how can you get a raise at your job, whatever else. Because if your mind is not right and you don't have enough money to be independent, those two things will always keep you back. And then the third thing that I would say, I would jump over, of course, you need your own house and you need a place to stay and you need to look after your physical health and you've got to sleep and you've got to eat and you've got to not drink and do drugs and all those different things that just harm you and hold you back. But then I would jump to the spiritual pillar, which is develop a vision for the future.
Absolutely.
What will it be like when you're no longer here in this dark place? What will it look like? What will it feel like? What will you be doing in your life at that point in time? How will you help others? Like, how will you be helping yourself? How will you be like, envision that? And I think if you do those three things, those are three of the most practical things that you can to start moving forward, I believe.
Mhm.
I don't know if you agree, Tara.
Oh, yes. Yes, I absolutely do agree. Wanda says she's physically disabled. So, what could be some things that could be helpful for her with that?
It depends on what kind of disability. If you if it's impossible to move, or if it's impossible to walk, or if it's impossible to have a job, then I would definitely figure out what is in my state and just federally what kind of financial support can you get for that. Because if you have disabilities and there is financial support for that, and then just make sure that financial support doesn't end up in the pocket of your abuser because that's the other problem, is that we often don't have control over our finances, or they convince us that we should lend money, or that they're investing on our behalf or whatever it is. So if you're disabled to the point where you can't work, then there has to be support in your state, in your county, in your city, and federal support. That's the first thing that I would try to do.
Yes,
And that
and
could include finances and accommodation and all kinds of things.
absolutely. And if that all seems just a little too much with some of y'all who are listening out there, we do have a resource support line. So they'll populate that in the chat so you can have that. But if you call that support line, they will try to help you find all the resources we're kind of talking about, whether it's community or therapy or any of that kind of stuff in your local area. So please be sure to use that. That's a really great resource that we offer to help you find the things you need legally, that kind of thing. We'll send you the resources we can find in your area and narrow it down a little bit more for you if you need that. So.
That's awesome. That's awesome to have one place where people can go for those resources.
Yes, yes, and the ladies over there do a really wonderful job, so I highly recommend it. Yes. So, is there anything else you'd like to say before we close out? Our hour went so fast.
It's so fast. The only thing that I would say is just keep going. Just it's not easy. And if and forgive yourself if you go back. Forgive yourself, just start again. Start working your way back out. It's
Mhm.
inevitable. Like we all did it, but just keep going, keep going. Every time you're going to get one step closer to, getting out and then staying out. That's what I
Mhm.
would say. Don't give up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, now this has been a very exciting, enlightening
In a
conversation.
very quick hour. That was a
Yeah.
very quick hour. Yeah.
Yes, your work is changing so many lives. We'll have the links for Ronel's book in the description, so please check that out. Get her book, and all the survivors listening out there. Just know what you're going through. You're not walking away alone. There is new hope and new direction that you can take. So let's just recap a few takeaways from today, right? Abuse affects every part of a survivor's life, but understanding the pillars of existence helps pinpoint where healing is needed. So recognize the unseen ways abuse is shaped you. It's essential. because otherwise, how can you break free from harmful patterns, right? And healing isn't just about surviving, it's about thriving and reclaiming your power.
Yeah.
So, absolutely. Before we go, we want to remind everyone that Break the Silence Against Domestic Violence relies on your support to continue providing advocacy and education and resources like our support line for survivors out there in the retreat. So if you believe in our mission, please consider donating. Every dollar makes a difference. You can donate here through Facebook. You can even use the stars. We accept stars. We also have GoFundMe, Patreon, Venmo, PayPal, My Giving Circle, and of course through our website at breakthesilencedv.org. And don't forget to subscribe to Through the Eyes of Survivors. You can find us also streaming on Spotify, Google Podcast, and Audible. And make sure to follow us on all the social media, um, all the different social media platforms. We're on them all: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Please definitely go subscribe over there into YouTube, because we're going to end up having some giveaways coming up pretty soon on our podcast. And you'll only get them if you're in the YouTube watching. So be sure to watch for that. And mark your calendars for next week's episode, where we do Through the Eyes of Survivors Uncensored, where we talk about the hottest topics in the news and legislation and things like that to keep you informed. We're going to have a powerful discussion next week, so you don't want to miss it. And thank you for joining us. Until next time, stay safe, stay strong, and continue to break your silence. Thank y'all. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Through the Eyes of Survivors. My name is Tara Woodlee, and I am the president of Break the Silence Against Domestic Violence, an organization that gives survivors and their families, and the families that have lost loved ones to domestic violence, access to a community that understands the journey that they're facing. We hope this episode impacts you, and hopefully you want to learn more about the topic. If it is helping you in some way, let us know in the comments below. We love your feedback. Also, make sure to click the subscribe button below and the bell right next to it, so that you can get notified the next time an episode premieres. We hope you will see us in the next episode, and thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in.